America, where you have Make America Great Again, closing the borders, fighting everybody who should be there or should not be there. And behind that, there's a fear and an anxiety about the future. You got the same message with Brexit. You remember when the UK left the European Union, where they said, no, no, no. We are anxious about people who come into this part of the world, and now we are anxious and fearful, and therefore we want to close our borders. Well, they decided to close their borders, and now it seems not all that of a wise decision that they took. We must therefore understand that in addition to the person who wants to go to a place where I can have a better life, the communities where he or she goes have their own anxieties. They have their own levels of tolerance, and they have their own levels of acceptance of people coming and going. And it's not only about so-called undocumented refugees or undocumented aliens or undocumented whatever. It's also when you have lots of tourists coming into a city, you have that same questions. We cannot live in our own city. There are too many tourists. You get that in many metropoles all over the world. And what we need to do is to start to understand the rights and the privileges of people living in these areas, as well as the rights and the privileges of the people who travel with their documents or without their documents, taking in consideration that each one of these who travel with or without documents are carrying the risk of their own decision. If I travel, even if it's just to another country in SADC, I must make sure that I'm well documented. I cannot go there undocumented. And when I get there, I must obey to the rules. So, Chairperson, I'm ending by saying this is a very complicated debate. I don't want to address the content from the point of view of politicians or police or frustrated citizens in a town or a city, or from the point of view where the travelers to other parts of the world to have a better life, to criticize that. I don't want to do that. I want us, especially as the media, to assist us to understand the debate and understand the guidelines and the frustrations and the dreams and the fears and the anxieties of all the people involved. And if we can then understand the situation and accept that we must have a tolerance and a humanity and a ubuntu towards each other, this problem of development in Africa, development in SADC, development in ECOWAS, the development will solve this problem, not the politicians. Thank you very much, Chair.
It's a roundtable, so we're going to hear others speak. We're going to Tanzania now, so as they get ready to take Tanzania. I think we should just make some points, and I would ask people like who's going to speak that will make this point, to keep notes so that we can address this issue. So the first people would assistant is a member of parliament, member of cabinet of the South African government, has spoken and has laid out a lot of things. And should be very clear. He said he doesn't want to see us on both sides. I think we should, but we should see it on both sides. Citizens can be frustrated about immigration. It is not new and it will never stop. But the peculiar phenomenon of South Africa are that citizens, not government, are going to burn people's houses. Citizens, not government, are going to chase people out. At least, at the barest minimum, the government is indolent about that. It's either we're dealing with anarchy. Where is the government? If the government wants to send out all the immigrants overnight, let the government do it with paid policemen, not militia. Unless we say we are now doing development in the world where individuals can go and burn people out and send out the immigrants. Because the states take notes. Nobody says immigrants should be illegal. But I say, even if immigrants are criminals, individuals do not have the right in a safe society to take laws into their hands. And that is the peculiar sociological case we're dealing with in South Africa. So yes, people maybe who are illegal, people that are criminals, people are condemned. But we're going to have a frank discussion. We must agree that there's something wrong in the society where individuals are taking laws in their hand. I'm very happy that Dr. Coates introduced the concept of ethics. We should also know what is right and wrong. We should also know about history and feelings. South Africans do not want poor people to come into their country because they would not want to be washed by poor people. It is not important whether they are economic or political refugees. In the streets of Nigeria, there are banks selling European citizenship. So the world is now mercantile. How stupid were Nigerians when they were allowed to have to come here? Because when they were coming, they were not rich. That is a mindset that context to all South Africans. That is a feeling that was invented in South Africa when we put the idea that I am because we are. That the person that is what today is needy for any reason in the world should be accommodated. Just because my grandfather lived about the birth certificate. A birth certificate is a new invention of the modern society. Yes, people should be documented. But not being documented is a civil crime. It is not something that you should be punished for or should be stigmatized for. If your borders are porous, maybe you should speak to your government. If the government cannot take care of crime, maybe that is a political issue. Maybe that should be dealt with in the ballot box. But these are perspectives. Let us go to Tanzania and speak to Dr. Bragg, who's on the line. Tanzania, are you ready?
Thank you, Professor Kila. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I couldn't follow well the first almost. So I'm sorry if I will be responding or dealing with the questions that were not raised. But at least I've heard what you have just ended with a moment ago. As a person from Tanzania, and as you all know, at least Tanganyika then and then later Tanzania, as a nation, as a country, we were at the center stage in the liberation struggle. And I'm not afraid to say in the struggle of liberation in this continent, and more so in the southern part of Africa, and South Africa included. And therefore, it pains me to see what is happening from that part of the continent in the way, of course, I know that we may want to intellectualize these bad behaviors that are being practiced by our fellow Africans. So I would like to start by saying that as a person from what has been all toward the center of the continent's liberation, this pains me so much. But I would like to do my presentation in the following aspects. Number one is what you ended on with when you talked about why the government, for example, is backpedaling when it comes to dealing with this situation. And I think it's very important to note that the fundamental problem, that is, as an economist, I would like to say, is that there is a difference when we say people are in the economy and when we say these people are operating in the political economy. What is happening in South Africa is that the governing class, particularly the ANC, have failed, I think, to understand that there is that big difference. People do not live in the economy, people live in the political economy. And when we are dealing with such situations, it's very important not only to deal with the questions asked by citizens by only focusing on what is ailing the economy, which they have failed, of course, spectacularly. I will have to dive deep in that. But you need to look at the bigger picture, and I think that has been happening. Why do I say so? I was following through what was, I don't know if today still exists, what was known the State of the Nation publications in South Africa. And I read the last publication of the State of the Nation in 2007, 2008. And that publication, it gives all Africans who are interested in these matters as Africans to get a grasp of what is really ailing South Africa. And one thing that came clear is that there are two distinct positions in South Africa of what they named as the exiles, the people who went into the struggle outside South Africa, the Mbeki, the Oliver Tambo, the Mandelas, and the rest. Those who gained some of their Pan-African credentials by staying in Nigeria, in Tanzania, in Kenya, and the rest. And the other group is of the exiles, those who struggled within South Africa. And these didn't know much how other Africans, of course, may be helped, or, and how South Africa was so intertwined during the liberation struggle. And what has happened is that during the reign of Mzee Mandela, there was a sense in which the exiles, those who came from outside, South Africans who fought for independence, for their liberation outside South Africa, were in a way embraced, and they did, and they played their part. But the exiles, even then, were not that much comfortable, because the perceptions, of course, that these people are taking their positions. Some had the feeling that they didn't understand much about what was really happening, and those undertones in the political space, in the economic spaces, in social spaces existed. But it was until when Mzee Thabo Mbeki now was more vocal and more clinical when it came to African Renaissance. And the whole idea was to integrate the South African economy into the rest of the continent, and thereby, of course, engaging African brains from the rest of the continent to South Africa. And that, of course, started bringing shivers within the circles of the insides. And to cut the story short, is that even the way President Mbeki, we call them Mbeki here in Tanzania, yes, was embarrassing. You could define clearly that it was the starting of the preoccupation of the exiles at the expense of extricating the exiles. And again, that signaled the bigger problem as far as the relations between South Africa and the rest of the continent. And that is what I would like to start with, that we have a fundamental problem that has not been defined in the context of the political economy of South Africa, which is the struggle of these two, which has been the struggle of these two groups. But then these two groups gained, I mean, the struggle, I mean, the confrontation, the undertones of these two groups have gained momentum when now it was vivid that the managers of South African economy failed to deliver, because what was at least containing the problem is that the economy in the early years of Mzee Mandela and Thabo Mbeki at least worked. If you look at some statistics, you find that, for example, employment, for example, moved from 7.9 million people in 1994 to almost 14 million people in 2008. Jobs were created under Mzee Mandela, for example, more than 479 were created. Under Mbeki, it was more than 526 jobs were created. GDP again grew, government debt dropped. But you could see that after 2008, that cycle of growth went haywire. Growth averaged between 1.6%, and between 2009 and 2018, and the near 1% since. And GDP per capita today is almost 7% lower than the 2008 levels. And now that's where the rubber meets the road. The so-called, the so-called people from South Africa were now becoming the punch bag, because the citizens now could say, no, this cannot be tolerated. But in fact, it is that the exiles have slowly been fueling that, and then they got the point to push that agenda. And that's why it is not so surprising that that publication, for example, came in 2008, and then it's not also not surprising that it was almost the major erupt in terms of the contestations between South Africans and the people from the rest of the continent. And therefore, it is this marriage between the mismanagement of the economy, and then on the other side, these historical political undertones between the exiles and the exiles. Number three is that now the question that as Africans we should be, not only Africans, but I think humanity should be asking. If the problem is, if the economy has not been functioning, is it because of the so-called immigrants or is it because of mismanagement of capital that is having elements of the return, of the resurgence of apartheid economy? Because what you are seeing now is that even the existing, the current government, the ruling coalition in South Africa, it's like they see Africa as an outpost where they can go and invest, but they don't see that bigger picture of Pan-African ideals. And it is therefore, one could say that it is now that the ANC, bagging itself as the Liberation Party, has gone in bed with this resurgence of whiteness backed by blackness. And we may at some point fear to say these facts, but if you see who is owning the economy of South Africa, these companies all over Africa, the ABSA, MT, and the rest in Nigeria, and Kenya, and Tanzania, and elsewhere, who is owning that capital? And if you say a person from Nigeria who is roasting maize, or from Tanzania who is helping a shopkeeper somewhere, that is, if you argue that that person is the cause of your unemployment, then you are saying unemployment is equal to blackness in a way, because we are not looking at the roots where capital has failed, where the government, I think the system has failed to redistribute that capital in favor of a certain class that has historically benefited from natural resources of South Africa. And therefore, it's the wrong question that these activists, ethno-nationalists of South Africa, arguing that this is the problem of the people from what. In any case, we have a lot of studies, we have a lot of researches that show that Africans from outside South Africa have in fact created jobs. They have not taken jobs. I think you remember that there was a publication called Somalianomics, that these people from Somalia and the way they have been able to create, to start business in South Africa, and they're creating jobs for many people. And that's the case in Tanzania. Here you can talk about Somalianomics. In Kenya you can talk about Somalianomics. You can talk about Nigerians creating jobs in other countries, for example, where they are. In Nairobi you can find them. And this is also happening in South Africa. Why would one say that these people are just taking jobs, even when the economic facts talk otherwise? Lastly, I think it is also important to say that this problem is an egg on the face of current leaders of the continent, because I've talked about the leaders in South Africa, but I think the continent as well, because you don't see, apart from throwing words from here and there, you don't see that Pan-Africanist sense in terms of actions to deal with these fundamental problems. And one may feel that maybe this current crop of African readers is subscribing to the fact of some scholars like Meredith have called, who called some African countries white men's countries, Kenya, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and now there is a sense in which these that these leaders are trying to appreciate that fact and say, now you use, when you see Black Africans chasing other Black Africans, it's just a decoy. But it is true that these people understand what is boiling beneath what we are seeing, and that fact of intergenerational value creation that is at the center of Africa Vision 2063 is nowhere to be seen. You don't hear these leaders, you don't see them acting, and my only conclusion is that they have accepted that wrong fact. So the system itself that is governing African politics and African economy has terribly failed. And therefore, it is my humble submission that if we decouple these issues, we won't get that clear picture. We need to go back to the way these systems have been fomenting. And the real question is, why are we not acting as we should be? And my last point, a footnote, is to the economists in Africa, political economy scholars. Economics without culture and geography is like any other kind of Ponzi scheme. So you don't disintegrate economics from culture and geography. And this is what we're seeing in South Africa, and it is spreading all over Africa. Thank you, Professor Kila, and thank you for this invitation.
Thank you very much, Doctor. We're clapping for you. When you're gathered, really be clap for you. We're supposed to clap. I won't tell you to know. But that's the way. We're going to go back to West Africa now. So, folks, get ready. We have somebody who, in one body, she's representing Senegal and the Gambia together. I think that's the old way that comes. So, Senegambia, yes, exactly. So we're going to Senegambia. Futu, are you there as well? Yes. No, you just start. She's the one who read AJ. So just go ahead and speak when you're ready. We can hear you very well.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Kila, for really conveying this important discussion on South Africa. I think what has been happening, I think, has brought a lot of concerns across the continent, and I think for many reasons. Beyond the emotions, I think South Africa represents quite a lot for the rest of the continent, given its past. I think also given the attachment of many Africans, from all, especially sub-Saharan Africans, because of the apartheid, how Africa, united in its majority, really in solidarity. So I think that attachment, I think made the whole thing very difficult for many Africans. And also, I think the previous speaker talked about the economy, and I think we need to really unfold, really bring to the fore some of those difficult discussions around the economy. Post-apartheid, some people may say, it's the best that could happen to most of those, South African businesses, because now, they have a free highway across Africa to invest with little strings attached, open their businesses without necessarily, a lot of constraint across the region. And I think that in itself also, I think, showed that, those eras, the post-apartheid eras, everybody was kind of enthusiastic. The other point that also we need to factor in is the academia. South Africa presenting itself as, a center of excellence in terms of its universities, in terms of, opening up for the rest of the continent and beyond, for people to come and study and you can see a lot of the centers calling themselves, African, and studying African issues, and when I looked at the area that I'm very interested in, the human rights, there are many centers of excellence in South Africa where people come from different part of the continent to study. So I think for the political, the historical, the economy, and also the other part, which is very important, the knowledge. When what happened, was all over the media, people started to doubt about, the one-sidedness of the relationship between South Africa and the rest of the continent. From a human rights perspective, I lived in South Africa for almost 3 years. I was working for an international organization, but I have friends also living in townships. I used to visit quite a lot the families, sharing traditional meals, visiting from Johannesburg to Cape Town. And I see also what has been, happening, the high expectations that the communities had, post-apartheid, and the disappointment, and seeing sometimes colleagues or friends coming from other countries, being in better position. And I think sometimes also it could be like frustration. So we also need to factor in that in many places around the world, when people see foreigners, people who are not coming from the country, doing better, it also creates some anxieties and some frustrations. And those frustrations are not generally, sent to the state or to the authorities. Generally, and unfortunately, they are geared towards, the hardworking migrants. But also, we also need to understand that some of the concerns of local communities are genuine. We should not brush them under the carpet. We need to look at them seriously from many points of views. From the point of view of governance first, from the point of view of governance in terms of access to public services, in terms of also safety and security, when crimes are increasing in communities, when protection is not adequately provided by those who are supposed to provide, when people feel that, the little that is available within the communities is being shared by people maybe who have a second home. So I think those are issues that are, that are being, seen everywhere. And the speaker from South Africa, the earlier speaker, mentioned some of the things that are globally now. And because also the globalization of the media, the way issues are portrayed in the media, especially in social media, we're seeing some kind of generalization of hatred, of uh, uh, resentment vis-a-vis of migrant foreigners more than before. And I think also it's due to the fact that the public services are not accurate, and we have economic crisis. So people tend to really feel anxious, and not having places or authorities not dealing with some of these issues adequately. They just address some of those issues and pinpoint foreigners. So I think that is also something that we're seeing in the crisis in South Africa. One point that is really of great concern, and I believe that's where I think there's a failure, the institutional failure, the lack of adequate protection of those people who have been really targeted. We've seen the images across the world, and they are very disheartening. And people's, hard-earned, resources, people physically assaulted and humiliated. And I think those really are not telling well. And I think many people across the continent are very, angry when they see those things. And I think it reminds them of, the love, the sacrifices, and, the Pan-African, kind of ideals that they've thought that, we will always have when dealing with each other. But I believe that when people are in need, sometimes when people are instigated, especially with hatred, it's very difficult. It's very difficult sometimes to be measured. So just to say that concerns across the region have been that the xenophobia is there, but also the authorities have not been providing enough protection to the people. So I just want to say yes, as somebody who lived in South Africa, somebody who's seen what has been happening in some of the places, the lack of adequate resources, the lack of basic public services, one can understand somehow the anxiety, but I think the violence and the unfair treatment of those people who are perceived to be, taking advantage of the situation, I think it's very, very concerning, because those people also are vulnerable. Some of these people are perhaps economic migrants. They are only looking for better condition. Obviously, one can also pinpoint to their home countries, saying that we need to do better across Africa, across ECOWAS particularly. We need to do better so that our citizens can feel safe, can feel home, so that the vulnerability, trying to go away, trying to go to other places to find better living can also be reduced, because when people are so vulnerable, they take so many risks. And also the last point I want to raise also, which is linked to this migration, is I think the criminal aspect of it, the trafficking, the human trafficking, and also the fact that they are genuine migrants, they are genuine economic migrants, they are people who are just looking for better, livelihood, but also there are many within those midst also that are, motivated, and doing criminal activities that are not acceptable also, because when you are also going to other places, you also need to ensure that you abide by the rules. But having said that, for me, I think the blame is shared, but the authorities in South Africa should do better. And I think they could do better. They could also enlighten the citizenry about the importance of Pan-Africanism, because Africa has been there for South Africa. South Africa must continue to shed the light. South Africa portraying itself as an economic hub, open to business, open for knowledge sharing. I think they need also to do better in terms of the policies, in terms of the way they treat migrants, especially vulnerable migrants. So the last point is, I think, what I noticed even when I was there a few years, 2 decades ago, is that there is some unfinished business in relationship to us and them, and seeing some of the migrants as people who will come to South Africa accepting maybe lower wages, working in conditions that the ordinary South Africa would not like to work. And I think also that sometimes they regulate labor relationship. So in a nutshell, it's very complex, but we need leaders who will take these matters seriously beyond the day-to-day political rhetoric, but also beyond also all these chaos that we're seeing around the world, targeting migrants and foreigners in the different countries, because I think this is also a global issue that we should not, disconnect what is happening in South Africa with the rest of the world. So it is really a good opportunity to share, but I think that we need to address the different facets, but also put in place mechanisms in most of our countries also for governance, because I think this is a failure in governance within South Africa, but also across the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. I think we're expanding the conversation. We're going to go back to South Africa now. We'll go to, what is it, East Africa? We'll go to Zimbabwe, and definitely back to South Africa. But before we do that, I would like to take Nigeria, somebody from Nigeria, or just like interview. I think it's important that we continue to remember what we agree on and what we are exploring. So far, it seems to be clear that these issues stem from economic discomfort. It also seems to be clear that the reason why we've seen abnormalities is application of government. It's an African government that is not doing its immigration job, and citizens are going to do it. Other African governments whose citizens are so poor that they have to go to South Africa to become beggars and be labeled as nuance and irritants to those countries. That is the issue. But there are also some peculiarity we should look at as well. Europe has centuries of immigration issue, and it is current up to date. Rarely do you see the English have treated badly the Irish, but get out of our country, you don't see white on white. They might oppress them against a defined ethnic or racial group. It's either Jews or blacks. They might oppress others. Brexit. They did not tell the Poles to get out of their country. They said they were taking their job. Get out of our country. We should not evade that peculiarity that we're seeing. I think it's something we should add to our conversation. This idea of framing what is going on in South Africa as just an economic issue or people are tired of immigration, I think it's superficial, allow me to say, as a scholar. I think there is more to it. There's more of psychological issue and maybe externally motivated issue. But whatever it is, on the surface, what is showing is a peculiar situation of Afrophobia. Maybe it's because of money, but South Africans don't go and attack white people. They don't treat them that way. Maybe they feel stronger. And I think larger for now.
First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers. It's not one of them. First, on the organizers for using today to honor the Secretary General. Why am I saying this? That it is supposed to honor our icon like this today. You know, after listening to everybody, I just look at my own profession, the media, and I think there is a problem. We haven't covered the issue we are discussing today well in the Nigerian mass media. And if I look at this place, I'm not too sure of too many foreign affairs reporters in this place. How many foreign affairs reporters are here? How many? How many? We don't know. We have advertised this thing. There are so many members and observers, members of journalism bodies. There are so many editors and all those things. When you read our newspapers now, and as you read some African newspapers and news magazines, even television stations and all those things, the space we devote to foreign issues. Even as you see some, they even forget about foreign issues. And this important thing that I will just leave this very serious matter to social media boys and girls. I'm sorry to use that word, who do not even understand what we are talking about. They just blame people, they attack people, do all sorts of things. And I think we should look at issues that have made the media to be a very, very, very difficult to manage in this place now because there are economic issues that we even discussed elsewhere yesterday with the political economy of a free press is biting to the extent that we are not discussing even continental affairs now. And I took some note from what even from the last speaker, I took some look at. Okay, but we need to do better in African countries. We need leaders who will take these issues seriously. These are very simple but very serious statements. Failure in South Africa. When we are talking of Nigeria now, this is the most populous Black nation on earth and the most populous in Africa. And we should be dictating things that I just as we were talking here now, beyond all the serious issues. But remember that even somebody once ruled this country as a military leader for only 6 months. And what he did included something that led to independence of an African country. It was on a Sunday, 11th January 1976, when they had an AU conference on a Sunday. He mobilized African leaders, which led to this very popular quote, Africa has come of age. Yeah. An African leader. Because it was a reference to Gerald Ford's letter on Angola, because of MPLA, because it was backed by Russia, and he wrote a letter and he mobilized African leaders to reply and to say, no, Africa has come of age. We will no longer the late General Murtala Mohammed for young people who didn't understand what I was talking about. So what I am saying is that our leaders, even our leaders here at home, there are so many of them, it's not only one person, but then if you have a leader, they should take some of this very seriously, because from the look of things now, AU is not in this discussion. They mentioned even ECOWAS, they are not in this discussion. The AU new complex in Addis Ababa was built by China. And now in Abuja, China has started building a new ECOWAS complex for ECOWAS. China. So we need to call on African leaders that they should be more serious. They should be more serious. There was a reference to Europe here now. If you don't want to go by air to any European countries from UK, from France, from anything, you can use various any form of integrated transportation system. You want to go by road, you want to use any train service, any kind of thing. But here in West Africa, even now is improved. To go from this Lagos to get to the Republic to go by road, the problem. And I think that we are discussing this thing, we are blaming ourselves, we are blaming South Africa, we are blaming this in South Africa. South Africa is far ahead. Somehow, if you look at this place, from what even the last speaker said about South Africa, about education, quality. When you look at global rating of universities, quality, most of it out of the 10 that you will find in Africa, sometimes of their tertiary education, 7 out of 10 You look at two multinational this stage of the data. You know the power of MTN there. They took MTN from a neighboring country. MTN was not formed in, I have done this one in a business school. MTN was not formed in South Africa. It was in a neighboring country. They only took it to South Africa because of the power of South Africa. But that is a discussion for another time.
Thank you.
Now, what of another king that we serve every day? Choice and the owner of DSTV. So it's from South Africa. Their own countries to have such multinational companies. What do we take to South Africa? We, as the giant, we are not in the sun anyway. What do we take to South Africa? Churches. It's not an African matter. What we get made in South Africa, whether alcoholic or non-alcoholic, the best that we'll find in our various stores from South Africa. So they are doing this thing. We are using this one to discuss this point that have been made by some of the speakers. We should do well to prevent our people from migrating. We have enough, God has blessed us enough. We call on African leaders to do the needful. I recorded something when this thing was going on. I discovered that in 2019 at the Guardian, 2019, Guardian newspaper, the person of the year, a woman, a Zimbabwean, married to a Ghanaian, Dr. Arikana. Zimbabwe, I don't know how to pronounce the other name, like that. She was AU's permanent representative to the United Nations. But because of anti-colonial speeches she was making, and not many people knew her, she was doing all this. She was asking France, why you take about $500 billion from Africa every year. She was making all these statements, anti-colonial speeches she was making. This Dr. Arikana, you can find out about, she was the Guardian Person of the Year in 2019. I was there. I was part of the editorial board that did the story. But you know, this woman, because of the weakness of African leaders, the Western powers that control United Nations did not like her. It was the African Commission, the leader of the African Commission, a leader in West Africa, let's just forget about the name, that withdrew her just to satisfy Western powers. He's a medical doctor, very successful family doctor. She and her husband established a successful medical practice in the United States. They withdrew her. She was involved in all these things that are not because she didn't have anything to do. But is a Zimbabwean. So they withdrew her, they didn't do anything because of the speeches she was making, because of the way she was trying to raise Africans to realize that neocolonialism was actually, yes, was prevalent. So what I am saying that we in the media, and I think we need to wake up to ensure that there is some form of coverage of all these things, because many people do not understand some of this. They are very happy about this discussion. Many people are not aware of the events. Many people do not have history of, many young people especially, don't have history of our relationship with South Africa. But this is not just about relationship with South Africa, where we should be tired of saying, this is what we did for you, this is what we did for you. But what are we even doing for ourselves now? And we know, as our elder here said, Sambo Mbeki and all those things like that, they were here. Many of them, some of them even had the postgraduate certificate in Ife and the University of Lagos, all those first generation universities we're picking their bills, we're paying their bills, we did so many things for them. But that one, since that time, a lot of water has come under the bridge. A lot of things, we should be telling stories, and it's an opportunity to call on the leadership in Nigeria that they should also replicate what Murtala did in those days. Within 6 months, he was able to lift the image of the African. 6 months. And this is not about Murtala. You know, within the 6 months, he also proclaimed Abuja, that where everybody is now, within 6 months. And he got a panel headed by Justice Akinola. Within before you knew they had submitted the report, before you knew like that, you can say the leadership. It's not enough to say, oh, social media, you just hear the it's good that the president didn't receive him, it's good, but if the leadership fail, what see or talk to the Foreign Affairs Ministry should be there too. They have done well. We should ask African leaders to, including him, what is happening to the old Nepal. You know, the original aim was to fight poverty that is leading people now, that is making migration to be like a crime. Nepal, also based in the headquarters, was in South Africa, and our people were going there. They have changed the name now to something else, but Nepal is what we know. And they were supposed to do a peer review. The late ambassador of Bolokun used to go there, and they were doing all sorts of things like that. But all those things we do not hear anything about it. Even the United States and some other African and some other Western leaders, they will introduce some things like that to ease trade between Africa and the rest of the world. But African leaders have not been benefiting at all. And the world that is going on now, free trade thing, all is that more seriously. We know that there are domestic issues, and then for us in the media, we take local issues to be 60% most of the time, but it's now anything that happens in any part of the world now has become a big story. Within us, it's not like before. We go viral. So all these things happening, we have a responsibility to explain this thing to our people through some contextual reporting, who are also doing this thing in the social media. We should be interested in also calling on leaders to take economic development is key. Everything we are so that we will say, I'm a Nigerian. Why would I want to get out of this place? Why would people want to hate this place? Why would people hate their country? Nobody. There are some nationals who will not Nigeria, but there's nowhere you get to not find Nigeria. Don't. Then, looking for business and all those things, you will hardly find believe that we in the media, we take it away from the blame game. And the African leaders, they need to take governance system very seriously. They are doing too much politics. Governance is also important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to go back on the line now. Can we go to East Africa or South Africa? Professor Makufu, are you there? Or Wanda?
Yes, I'm there,
Can you please
Professor Akil,
unmute
I'm there.
and talk? Either Kenya or... Okay, very good. Let's go to Kenya then. Let's go to East Africa. Once just go ahead.
Yes, so I'm not hearing you very well. I don't know whether now I'm supposed to speak. There's a bit of interruption, and so I'll just speak. If me, please let me know. Okay, so the speakers before me have been very clear in terms of diagnosing what the challenges are, why are we here, and like the issues are layered. We have the challenge of unresolved issues within South Africa. As a political society, they have issues that they need to resolve, and those issues, because they have impact, their lack of resolution have impact on people's life chances and the economic condition of the majority of their people. We know the scapegoating to migrants, and it is not just a South African problem, the scapegoating of others. That's not a South African problem only. There is also the question of why do people leave their home countries? People don't leave because they want to be tourists. And the speaker before me, I just spoken about governance. How can we govern better so that our people don't have to flee their homes to go and seek green pastures elsewhere, even when they are unwelcome? I'm not excusing South Africans. I'm just saying it's layered. It's not just one person to blame. And when I say that, I'm also trying to say what South Africans have been doing is abhorrent. It's not a good thing, but it doesn't make them bad people if you really understand the big picture of economic precarity, decades and decades of unresolved issues, and most important, what their life chances have been and what they had hoped to get. And given the power hierarchies in that country, they have had to find a very convenient scapegoat, and the political leadership has not helped in that country either. And then I've talked about the places where these migrants are coming from. There is a question of governance as well in those places. Secondly, thirdly, there is the question of displacement from other countries because of conflict. Somebody spoke about the contribution of the Somali nation in South Africa. Why are Somalis in South Africa? Because Somalia failed. So how do we address the sources of that kind of displacement? In this part of the continent where I am in Eastern Africa, we have so much displacement. If you come to Nairobi, you will see all manner of people from Sudan, South Sudan, from Burundi, from Rwanda, from everywhere. Now, the lesson from South Africa is not good. If Kenyans begin to scapegoat the economic hardship in the country and say it's foreigners who are causing it, that will be a problem. And that is the other layer that I'm talking about. So what does this mean for the continent and the issues the continent faces? One of them is that it weakens Pan-African solidarity and it erodes trust. Countries like my own, without thinking that tomorrow you may also need that kind of support, we host a lot of people who are displaced by conflict. But South African example tells us maybe we can even refuse to host people who have been displaced by conflict. And it doesn't bode very well for the continent in terms of the continental integration agenda. I think that is one of the biggest issues that Africans want to achieve in the near future. it doesn't also help with the African Continental Free Trade Area. And for me, that is the biggest thing we need to worry about, because trade is not such. For me, if you have trade and you don't have the people with the trade, you're doing nothing useful, because you can't just have containers and computers and all those things moving across the continent, and money, currency, and the people are not able to move across the continent. Because for the African Free Trade Area to really function, it also has to have a democratic support. And democratic support is the people, and the people ought to be able to move across the continent freely. In fact, why do Africans need visas to move from one part of the continent to another? You see, those are the kind of layered conversations our leadership from the African Union to lead regional leadership like ECOWAS, the East African Community, SADC, all of them, they need to have those kind of conversations and say, how can we catalyze conversations at every level of society where it is understood Africans have to have a focusing of the mind towards a certain destination where we must arrive, and we can only arrive there together. We cannot arrive there divided. And what are the issues? And Fatu talked a bit about those, the structural issues that we must address, so that people are not looking for excuses to get rid of others. The violence is very bad, but why are people resorting to violence? The material condition of our people, a majority of our people, is very dehumanizing. And when you are dehumanized, you also dehumanize your neighbor and you go after them. And I think the economy is a center of it. The politics are there, but the politics exploit the economic hardship. And that is a very important point that must be discussed at all levels. And Africans need to begin to ask their leadership to provide a path forward. And Africans, actually, what they need is not to be handed solutions. They need governments to stop being obstacles. Don't run a corrupt system where we can't do anything or run a business. Give us quality education. Give us space to innovate. Don't close the civic space. We can't express ourselves. We can't share our ideas. Give us academic freedom. All the things that need to happen so that people can really build lives that make sense. So African governments, first and foremost, need to stop being obstacles or creating obstacles. The second thing, they need to lay both the social and physical infrastructure for prosperity across board, not just the billionaires. And when you have prosperity across, why would someone live? There are very nice place where in Ethiopia, in a village in Ethiopia, where they make coffee using all those ceremonies, to go all the way to South Africa to be driven away if their space in Ethiopia was functioning and they was thriving. You know, so Africans need to thrive first and foremost, whatever part of the continent they are. But that said, you cannot prosper as a continent if our people are not part of the integration agenda. It can't be business that is integrating the billionaires and the companies, and even some of the companies, we don't own them, you see. So we have real issues to discuss. This particular issue looks simple, but it throws up so many issues that need discussion and resolution. I will leave it there because I don't want to repeat what other speakers had said. Thank you very much. Did you hear me? I can't hear anything.
We heard you very well, Wanda. We heard you and we applauded you. We heard you very well and we applauded you. Thank you very much. We were expecting Professor Mokufo, Shepherd Mokufo. Shepherd, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, if not, we go back to Nigeria. If not, we go back to... Are you there now? Can you hear us? Well, I mean, can you talk? Are you there now? Can you hear us? Well, I mean, can you talk?
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for the invite. So I live in South Africa and I'm from Zimbabwe. And as an academic, my work really revolves around problematizing what people say from below, or the activism of ordinary citizens from below. And when we look at the issues around xenophobia in South Africa, and indeed migration across the globe, we should agree that human beings generally are self-preserving beings. By this, I mean that when there is danger, a human being will likely, and in all likelihood, try to protect themselves and find convenient ways or spaces and places of safety. And this is what migrants actually do. I wanted to challenge a colleague in terms of what you were saying about being ethical and being moral in terms of migration or in terms of moving to other countries. Granted that in some instances, indeed, it is needed, but in some instances, you find that people are pushed from their countries, are pushed from their locales because of war, because of violence, because of political persecution. And in such instances, people do not have the luxury to be documented, as it were, when they leave their countries. And South Africa offers a very attractive destination for immigrants, especially asylum seekers, because South Africa doesn't create camps for asylum seekers. They try to integrate them into society. And of course, you have institutional failures. The Home Affairs has failed to grant asylum seekers proper documentation. Also, in South Africa, you speak of border controls not being robust enough to prevent illegal immigration. And illegal immigrants, as Wanda said, and immigrants generally, and African immigrants specifically, they get scapegoated for many different things, including crime. And most of my Nigerian friends that I've met, they do not, in South Africa, they do not even know what cocaine, mandrax, or any other drug looks like. But the perception, even from ministerial pronouncements, from politicians' pronouncements, is that Nigerians deal with drugs. So you have that kind of a stereotype. And those who have been following what is happening in South Africa currently, there's what is called Madlanga Commission, which is looking at the corruption in police and in judiciary. And you find that police are moving tons and tons of drugs, stealing the same drugs and possibly trading in the same drugs in the black market. And then you wonder how much then is a foreigner or a Nigerian moving in terms of drugs and putting these in the market. And another crucial thing that South Africa provides, I think South Africa's constitution has been hailed as one of the most progressive constitutions that even allows immigrants to protest within South Africa. Some of these things that could not even happen in Zimbabwe, just across the border. And this brings another dynamic again of leadership that Wanza has spoken about in the African context and in mostly northwards of Africa, where democracy is wanting, and the post-colonial governments have actually dented the prospects and the expectations of what Africans expected as democratic institutions or as democratic countries. And as a journalism scholar, again, when I was in my undergrad, I read a quotation, I can't remember from whom, which says that in a country where journalists are free, where there's robust media, people do not go hungry, right? And we look at the role of the media, that the role the media has played in some of the African countries. In Zimbabwe, for instance, it has been a huge failure in terms of exposing corruption, advocating for a just society, advocating for democracy and the like. And the country is what it is now because of partly failures of the fourth estate. And also being a Zimbabwean myself again, if you look at the amount of people that are moving across the border to South Africa, it speaks of governance failures in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is rich enough to provide for its citizens, it's rich enough to provide jobs for the hundreds of thousands that have crossed over to South Africa. So something is going wrong in terms of governance in that regard. And when you look at the media again, if we look at social media, which brings about the self-coverage of these of protesters, some of which are vigilante groups, by the way, in South Africa. Of course, the leaders will tell you we don't want violence and the like, and they will march in the afternoon. As the sun sets, violence starts. The looting of Pakistani, Somali shops, Nigerian shops starts by vigilante groups, right? But the most important thing that I want to bring to the fore is the conversations that the leaders of the marches have been saying, one of which is South African employers, mostly white and in the service industry, you have your farms, you have your restaurants and the like. They employ non-nationals who are not well documented and they pay them a pittance, something that is not even allowed at law by the South African government. And this, the argument has been, you are abusing our fellow African brothers and sisters. You cannot do this, one. And secondly, the argument is that there's a South African who can easily be employed in that in a certain particular job, especially if it doesn't need skills, which is sort of a fair argument. And the critical issues that, again, if we can pitch it up at a scholarly level, is what does African unity, what does Pan-Africanism mean to the vigilante groups, to the leaders of the marching or the anti-immigrant bands, as it were? And at another level, again, is what does Africa owe, or what do other African countries owe their citizens so that they do not go through the dehumanization that we've seen in South Africa? Go to the Malawian embassy today. Malawians are still stuck there. And one critical question that an African is supposed to ask is, does the Malawian government really care about its people to an extent that months and months Malawians have spent in the cold outside the embassy? Some have even given birth outside the embassy there, which is not something that is expected. And you wonder, what is it that their governments are thinking, or what are the governments are saying about that? So this reflects again on the failures of African governments. And last but not least, I think the other thing that we should look at is, of course, there might be illegalities in terms of the immigrants, but we are likely going to have a knock on the economy of South Africa because of what has happened. And also, the other critical question is, why are the politicians in South Africa not coming on board in terms of trying to address this critical issue? The ANC is read, as it were, the temperature in the room of politics, and they've seen how anti-immigration is sort of a very good campaign card for certain parties. Donald Trump, for instance, and it's a global thing. And if the ANC sort of comes hard on anti-immigrant marchers and the vigilante groups, what does it mean to its political prospects and survival? And also, there are certain political parties within South Africa that are capitalizing on anti-immigrant sentiment and gaining traction in that regard. So you have that sort of bind, as it were, politically, to an extent that the anti-immigrant sentiments, vigilantism, and these xenophobic bands sort of prosper and grow within South Africa without being curtailed even by the law enforcement agents, which law enforcement agents, by the way, have also failed the ordinary people, the ordinary folk, in terms of resolving basic crime. So this is my few cents that I will just put onto the table. Thank you so much for the invite.
Of the niche publication. But I think I continue to give us elements, because this conversation will not finish here, that we should reflect on. When President Okobo says that the South African people think it's unfair that white employers should employ their fellow African competitors, maybe they say that, but that's not their signature of their match. Maybe that is one thing they add to their conversation. The real match is get out of here. The real match is we don't want you. The real match is we burn down your house. I think we yes, it's go exactly. I think we need to bear in mind it. And these are the peculiarities. The other thing is this. I think we need to look at it. There are other parts of the world where citizens are anti-immigration. What they do is to vote for a political party that is against immigration. There are people, about 20 in the last poll in the UK today, 22% of people are voting reform. Less than 1% are voting Restore Party, who are clearly anti-immigration. They don't go around burning people. And to the South Africans, when some people went out to touch immigrants, the whole of Parliament in the UK stood up to say, this is wrong. Those are the missing elements in South Africa. We want to look at it. The other thing, and it must be said, maybe it's why I'm not popular, we cannot be diplomatic or politically correct about it. After Mandela, the most popular South African in the world is a guy who's a comedian called, what's his name? The one in America. Sorry? No. The one that, is it Trevor Noah? Well, we hear his jokes. He talks about everything. He seems rather quiet on this matter. And I think we need to call it out. He has spoken on international things. He has explained, like we've heard today, why when people are poor, they get angry. But I think when you have that kind of voice, you should be able to say this is wrong. What's the point of being popular and rich if you cannot use your power and fame? Maybe they should give it to somebody who deserves it. Ikechukwu Amechi.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Uncle Red. I think your birthday made this possible. If you were not celebrating your birthday today, perhaps we may still be procrastinating. It will be August 8, it will be September 6, and all that. So thank you for facilitating all of us. And I've been listening to everybody, those that have spoken before me. This is a very important conversation that we need to have as Africans, as Black people. What I find very disconcerting most times is the rationalization that goes on in South Africa on why this should go on, and the justification for what, if you ask me, is pure and simple barbarity. There is no way to paint this picture any other way. And we tend to forget that this phenomenon called xenophobia in South Africa, or called Afrophobia, as people are branding it now, didn't start in 2026. In fact, immediately after South Africa got its independence and Nelson Mandela became president in 1994, of course, there was this euphoria that one of our own is now the president of South Africa. And South Africa, Nelson Mandela, of course, created the concept of the rainbow nation. And everybody saw it as a land of opportunity. And as it is always the case, when people perceive a country as a land of opportunity, there is this issue of migration. Let me also correct one other impression. People don't necessarily migrate because they are poor in their country. There are people who just travel, just go, just feel like going to some other place now to settle. There are Nigerians that are in Australia. There are Nigerians that are all over the world. So it's not only in South Africa. Yes, there are some people who are there who are economic migrants, people who left their own countries because of the socio-economic conditions that they consider not very friendly. It is a historical fact that human beings migrate, and it is not necessarily because the economies or even the socio-political conditions in their own countries have become so adverse that they can no longer survive in their countries. All these points are necessary because if you do a little research about xenophobia or Afrophobia in South Africa, there now Africans acquire the job and then use the job. The last figure If anybody, whether a migrant, a citizen, violates the law, there are processes. Nothing says that if Ikechukwu is an illegal immigrant in South Africa, he should burn me alive. He should kill me. He should vandalize my property. He should take over my house without going through the due process of the law. Otherwise, we will be living in an animal kingdom. Even at that, even in animal kingdoms, animals don't kill for fun. They only kill for food. So you don't go and behave. And one terrible thing that these issues in South Africa, it goes to reconfirm the stereotype of the Western world that we are animals in this part of the world. Because like Professor Killer also said, there are migrant issues almost everywhere. The other day, how many people died while trying to go to Spain, crossing Morocco and going to Spain? Even those that were arrested, they were not lynched. They have not been punished. They will still thrive. And if it is found that they have breached the laws of Spain, they will either be repatriated or something will be done, even if it means sending the people to prison. You don't see large crowds, shirtless men bearing arms, dancing on the street, looking for who to club to death. No, it doesn't make sense. And anybody who is rationalizing this
animalistic conduct in whatever guise misses the point. The other issue is also the role of security personnel in South Africa. I think it was on Kure. The last Nigerian that was killed in South Africa, one Ibe, was killed in police custody. Police went to his house and abducted him. And the pictures we are seeing are pictures of security officers deliberately suffocating somebody. Assuming without considering that it is true that all Nigerians in South Africa are drug peddlers, are drug bearers, are this and are that. What does South African law say about dealing in narcotics? Is South African law saying that the very moment you are accused, not convicted, you are accused of being a drug dealer, then you must die? No. So what is going on in South Africa must be condemned. It's not even the issue of what we did for them during the apartheid period. I think we've been belabored that point for so long. Even if we did not do anything for South Africa, even if we did not help them, of course we did help them. Of course, Nigeria, even being thousands of kilometers away from South Africa, became a frontline state in the fight against apartheid. I remember the speech that Professor Kila was talking about by late General Murtala Mohammed. Africa must be for Africa. Africa has come of age. I remember that even after Murtala died, I think it was General Olusegun who nationalized British oil, that forced the hands of the British to grant Zimbabwe independence rather than being Southern Rhodesia. So we've done so much in Southern Africa. My friend who lives in the US today, Lillian Ono used to be the Nigerian ambassador to Namibia. We were discussing the other day, and she told me when she got to Namibia, what the then president, Sam Nujoma, told her about what Nigeria contributed in the liberation of Namibia. So we've done so much, but I am saying, even if we have done nothing, the punishment for being an immigrant, legal or illegal, should not be extrajudicial killing. South Africa has law. Let those who have contravened the laws of South Africa be treated according to the law. It is as simple as that. So when the first man who spoke, the professor, who was a member of the South African Assembly, tries to gaslight us about all these issues, they don't impress me. I am not impressed. Because if all of us decide to also do the same thing, then there will be chaos in Africa. There will be chaos in Africa. What we are asking is that let the law be used in dealing with this issue of migration. Whether it is illegal or legal, we must do according to the details of the law. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Like everything comes to an end, and good things come to an end very quickly. So we round up with an intervention from the President
of the League of Columnists of Nigeria, Toladini, who joins us from Canada at the moment. Akoko, can you hear us? Oh, better still, can you speak?
I can hear you. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Just go ahead, sir.
Yes, I just want to thank everyone and everybody that had taken part in this epoch-making roundtable. It's been very, very enlightening, educative, and illuminating. I thank our brothers and sisters from outside of Nigerian soil who participated from other parts of the continent. And I also want to commend the forthrightness with which everyone had expressed their opinion about what is going on in Africa at the moment, and also giving the historical background to the xenophobia that we have experienced in the past in Africa. I do hope that in the future we will be able to have more participants, especially although with the ones on streaming, we won't know how many people really participated on Facebook and other social media platforms. But by and large, it's been a very hard-working session. I've been educated, I've learned a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people have learned a lot from this very scholarly discussion. I want to thank the General Secretary, Professor Killer, for putting all this together, and also the Commonwealth Institute of Advanced Studies, the CIAPS, and also our able Vice President, Ray Epo, and other participants. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I do hope that when we are called upon again to join us in this kind of exercise, you will gladly come. Once again, I congratulate us for this program, and I do hope that more of it will come. Thank you so much, and have a nice evening.
Before we go into music, we started by singing happy birthday to Mr. Ray Ebu. Now that we have a fuller house, especially of the late comer, not you, but generally speaking. Can we all rise and celebrate the Vice President of the League of Columnists of Nigeria? We sing his birthday for him, Mr. Ray. If there's anybody in this room who doesn't know him, I won't tell you. You go and Google it, and you know who he is. Suffice to say, he's a mighty player. Just in time, Chief Gary Babangida is back again to lead us to the happy birthday song.
It's continuous.
I think I got the song. I was thinking it before. You played that song before. Somebody should touch that man. The happy birthday song you had. Okay, let's sing. Hello? Yes. Yes, yes. I don't allow you to sing it. But that's the lady who came last. Go ahead.
Don't worry. I'm checking.
Let's do it together. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. May the good Lord bless you. May the good Lord bless you. May the good Lord bless you. All good. May the good Lord bless you. If it be, we must sing for the jolly good story about yeah. Outside that doesn't make it.
And so say all of us, and so say all of us, let me put this thing away. Or do we treat around it or something? Thank you very much. We're going to do a group for let's arrange it. Uncle Ray will give us speech. What am I supposed to say about? About old age. Can I give you a lecture on old age? When people say, God, give me long life, God, give me a long life. I used to offer, give me a long life. And I said, at this point, is it the right thing to say to God? Why don't you leave it to Him? Why don't you leave it to Him to decide whether to give you long life? Because it is not easy to be old. When you are old, the elements come in multiples. Your eyes, your nose, your waist, your back, your everywhere is happening wrongly to you at the same time. Abroad, they have geriatric centers where old people live, and they bring medical personnel from various levels of expertise, various fields, and they go there and attend to those people. In Nigeria, I understand there is no geriatric center at the University of Ibadan, which is not well funded. But if you are old in Nigeria, you are old. You go to this hospital, they tell you bring 20 million for malaria. You go to another hospital, 5 million for bacteria and so on. And do you have that kind of money? See what I'm doing? You know?
You want to see that?
Okay. So,
where is it?
So we don't have excellent facilities. Even in the so-called teaching hospitals, the teaching hospitals. The Lagos State University Teaching Hospital was named as one of the best hospitals in those days, centers of excellence. Federal government assigned diseases to fight the 5 primary universities. You better just pay a cost in your casket before you get there. Because even the people who work there, they then establish their own facilities outside. Loose professors have building in Surulere. You go to the hospital and Loose, they treat you in a shabby way, and then they tell you where to come and meet them. That place is in Surulere. It's run by professors of Loose. And they do it in all the state-owned, all the federal-owned institutions. So we should appeal to our government to do more for our people. You have presidents in Nigeria that are not treated in Nigeria. So what do you expect to happen to Nigerians who are not presidents? President Muhammadu Buhari went to England, spent 225 days in all. Yes. 225 days for his treatment. So the rest of us, we don't have the money to go to England. President Tinubu goes to France. He doesn't tell us why he's going to France, but he goes there often. And we're not stupid, so we know why he's going. Why can't they expend some millions to improve facilities at Aso Rock and also improve the facilities elsewhere for the rest of us who are not presidents, who are not aspiring to be president, who will not be president? We're human beings. If we're not presidents, we're human beings. So we must appeal to our president to do more for our country. But it's not the president's fault only, it's not the government's fault only, it is also our fault. We're not doing enough to keep them on their toes. This week, I wrote a column I called, what did I call it? I talked about followership. Yes. The failure of followership. And my thesis in that is that the reason that Nigerian leaders fail is because Nigerian followers have failed. We are not putting our leaders on their toes. We just say, okay, God will help us. By God's grace. Yes, God is there, but God do knowledge. To think, to do something, to push, to have a better life for yourself. In that article, I said that a few years ago, the Buhari government set up forensic audits on Niger Delta, and they discovered that 13,000, they were 13,000 soldiers in Niger Delta. Niger Delta, they did that, and the people did nothing, said nothing. Just say, okay, God will provide. No, God doesn't work like that. God uses human beings. They kept quiet for almost 2 decades. We have 4 refineries. First, they produced nothing. Now somebody they tried stealing big money. We do nothing. We allowed the people who bought petrol and other things to import inflated prices.
Uncle Ray, let's make me people making. Let's bring my making. This man
we should do what? No, let me wind up. We did nothing. We and there the petrol and strong they charge what they want to charge us, and we pay. For 2 decades, it's not working. And then one man called Aliko Dangote set up a refinery that is bigger than the 4 refineries of Nigeria put together. We don't even want to support it. So I blame us for what. Just wake up. There is something called the Citizens Club. We are all members of that club. We don't have to be elected. We don't have to be appointed. But we are citizens of Nigeria. Let us wake up and fight for a better Nigeria. It's not wrong to just criticize the leaders some years ago. of the governors was tried in Kaduna, and he hired some people, hired us, followers. They came to the court and they said, no, this man is our leader. Don't try him. He's our man. He's our man. And the court didn't do anything. The man escaped and went to Dubai. He went to stay in Dubai. And then Itapo went and arrested him in Dubai and took him to UK. And they tried him in UK and jailed him. He has stayed 5 years and come back.
Welcome to you.
Is that a story that you are not familiar with? You are familiar with. That man is in Nigeria place, and he's making a lot of noise in his state. So we have a lot to blame ourselves for. Don't blame the leaders only. Blame us, the followers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. One of the members of the around of our guests to join us.
Next page, don't wait. This is exactly the middle.
Okay.
Yes. Let the people, where's the increase.
When you get the loan signed up.
I want to get that.
Yes, let's get that and find out.
My father was 88 before he went to headquarters.
88.
That's a young man.
My father was 60. Okay, 78. My mother died at 73. So between the two of them. You send them to my. Yes, you send them to my.
Wait, sir, let us join us.
Some other means are joining us.
Who else are you joining us? You cannot join us. Come and get the problem. Join that party.
Because so I become an old person.
You too. You can start playing music. The people are going to.